e mihi ana ki te iwi take o te whenua moimoia, ngā pākaiahi o te ahikae pupuri tonu nei te mauri o te whenua, ka mihi ki ngā tupuna me ngā urupa o rātau mā, ka mihi hoki ki ngā iwi take o te au, kua rauhi mai te rānei. Tēnei te whakamihi kia koutou katoa e kawe nei ngā maruapo o rātau mā me ngā kaupapa huhu o te hāpori, tuturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, haumie, huie, taiki. So that's how we do it. And that's basically what you hear sort of everyone else sort of say, but we sort of kick it off like that. Yeah, in our language. And that's how we kickstart. So lovely to see you, even though it's via this platform. I just want to sort of open the floor up, maybe ask you if you wanted to offer any prayer or any sort of words of faith.
Well, we do have a prayer or a statement. We call it like a dua before we start anything. So whether you're starting to eat, whether you're entering the house, and it's like a couple of words only, and it goes Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and it basically says in the name we start whatever we're starting in the name of God, the most merciful and the most gracious, and that's all I would like to offer.
Wow. All right. Nice.
I also wanted to say, Tyson, actually, the other part of this is it is upon us to anyone we ever meet that is of the same faith, and even if they aren't of the same faith, is to pass blessings. So if you ever meet someone for the first time, we start by saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And this means I pray for peace on you, and I pray for blessings and mercy for you in your life. So, Assalamu alaikum, Tyson.
Assalamu alaikum, Mehak. Awesome.
Thank
well,
you.
Before we go on more, I want you to tell me how to pronounce your name properly, because you sent me how to pronounce it, but I think the way you sent it to me is hilarious, because that's how I've actually sent that to somebody else. I've gone, hey, listen, it's like koala, but you just put like tuala in front, everyone gives their own way of doing it. So I'd like to maybe just tell me how you sent it to me. So
for sure. I love breaking it down, because I know it's not an easy and common name. And before I used to get a bit agitated. Now I'm like, I'll just teach you. That's fine. We can go through this learning journey together. So my name is Mehak Sheikh. Mehak is, if you break it in half and you think about the first part as if someone asks you, how's your day going? And you're like, meh, that's how my day is going. So it's meh. And then the second half is hek, which is like, what the heck are you doing, man? So you put meh and hek together. So that's Mehak. And my surname is Sheikh. And essentially it's like saying shake. So shake it off, or shake things up, which was the slogan of my entire campaign.
I saw that. I like that. I guess that's how you would say it if that was how you sort of wrote it. So Meh and Hek. So Mehak Sheikh, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, when you sent that, I laughed, because I was like, I've seen this so many times. Like, it just crosses all those different language barriers when you say, okay, how do we? Like, I taught a whole item by doing that. Like, tea, okay, sweet. So tea, like cup of tea, and car, like driving the car. And they'll be like, oh yeah, tea. And I'm like, oh man, you guys are pronouncing this so well, like instantly. Okay, well with that, I guess we can sort of start talking through what we're here to talk about today. We have had a little bit of discussion about stuff, and normally I'm quite like an organizer dude, so I would have gone away and I would like sort of research and find out stuff, but I wanted to try maybe this time walking in with just not knowing. But we're here to talk about the Kenyan, Punjab, Muslim culture through your eyes and what you sort of want to talk about. But I guess topic sort of part one, where it all began. So maybe I'll just pass it over to you to sort of give me an idea of, where you were born, how the sort of journey you took from, where you were, how old you were there, to the 4 different places I think you've said you've lived.
So I was born in Nairobi, Kenya, which is in East Africa, or one of an East African country, next to Uganda, Tanzania, and I think at the in the top we also have border with Egypt and Somalia. I am 4th generation Kenyan. So essentially that means that my mum was also born there. My grandmother was born in Uganda, which is next to Kenya. And I'll talk about her journey from what I've heard. Obviously, I can't speak for her, but what I know about it. And her parents, so my grandmother's father is the generation that actually went to Kenya. And they went from a region called Punjab in South Asia, which is why I look brown. I'm very proud to look brown. But South Asia was actually pre 1947 or 46, around that kind of era. It was actually all ruled by British, and it was one country. So Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, as we know it today, was all one. And Punjab sits in the middle of India and Pakistan, and that's where my ancestors are from. They were actually part of thousands and thousands and thousands of South Asians that went to build the railway. So there's a huge railway project that happened in the early 1900s, and a lot of South Asians went then, and then a lot of South Asians went with the as British subjects as well. So when I was 10 years old, my parents and myself, and I have a younger brother, we moved to the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and we lived in Sharjah. So it's a little town right next to Dubai. Everyone knows Dubai, but there's actually 7 emirates around it, and we lived in Sharjah, which is like, you could say it's almost like a suburb, because the country's small enough that those are suburbs, or like, for example, Melbourne and Sydney. So you've got Dubai and Sharjah. So I lived in Sharjah, and I was there for 5.5-ish years. So my parents moved us to Pakistan, and we went to Pakistan because when India and Pakistan had a partition, my family had to migrate from the India side of Punjab to the Pakistan side of Punjab, as they were practicing Muslims at the time.
Can I just stop you for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
What's a partition? What's a partition that you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. So I will obviously talk again from my understanding and experience. I'm not a historian, so my understanding is in 1945 to 7, so that period, the British rule had come to an end. So there was a fight for independence in that region, and then there was socio-political reasons as to why the country, as it was, actually had a line drawn between in the middle.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and that's
Yep.
it's actually called the Radcliffe line, and I learned this recently, and it's named after some superintendent. I don't know what the roles are in armies, but some sort of superintendent whose name was Radcliffe something, and he drew a line on a map, and essentially they said, this is where we will cut the country in half. And it's heartbreaking. I'm not someone who's gone through that, but my granddad, who was 10, 11 at the time, he's passed away, may God rest his soul. He was 10 or 11 years old at the time, so he was involved in the whole process of leaving life as he knew it to cross the border. And his father was much older, had a family and everything. So I'm now trying to find the stories, find the documentation, because nothing is listed anywhere, but we know that unfortunately there was a lot of bloodshed in that process. There was a lot of people whose families were separated. A day before yesterday, I was in the car with my parents, and they said, do you know, Mehak, we actually probably have family in India that don't know we exist. And so that's partition. It's when the country was sort of cut into half, not proportionally.
You sort of, not so much you, but in my eyes, India, it doesn't feel like a colonized country to me because it's not white with brown people. Do you know what I mean? Like, in my eyes, visually, you don't see India as being a colonized country. So, like, in Australia, you sort of see, like, oh, it's a colonized country because there's white people here, and the people that were here are sort of down at this level, and the colonizers are here. But visually, if like from my sort of perspective, I'd go, oh, I wouldn't realize. And then when you think about it, you're like, actually, yeah it's British India.
Well,
Like,
exactly, the British East Indian the kind of reign was there for, and my understanding, it was 300 years or something that the British were in South Asia. But Kenya was also a colonized country, which is why my first language is actually English, and I speak 3 other languages. But I grew up in Kenya, so our education system was in English. They too had to fight for independence in East Africa. So which is why when they took people from South Asia, they were like taking them from one part of the colony to another part of the colony, which is why they were referred to as British subjects. but over there too, it was 1967, from my understanding, December 1967, where they also gained their independence. But South Asians remained. So to this day, like I know people who are, ninth generation South Asians or sixth generation. So for them, like they're Kenyans. They don't identify with Pakistan or India. Just I guess if you're here for I'm Australian as well, but if you're here for generations and generations, this is where all you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wicked. Well,
So,
and see that's even opening the eyes a little bit as to the different types of cultures and where they get split and where Punjab sits in that whole framework. Because that's one of the questions that comes along and down here is where actually is Kenya?
yeah.
Where or what is Punjab? Because I've heard Punjab, related to an area, a state, a group of people. So that'll come down the track, but. Keep us sort of going on the journey. So your grandparents are there, and then your parents and you have moved to the UAE,
to Pakistan.
And then from UAE to Pakistan, and then where are you heading from there?
Yeah, and then we went back actually because we couldn't stay in Pakistan for too long, and there was just a whole lot of cultural clashes, and this is a very interesting experience to me, like in retrospect, because a lot of the times people bucket us into, I've had a lot of time to go through identity thought processes and stuff like that. I have the privilege that I have support from my parents, that I get time to think about this. My parents haven't had that privilege because they've just been like, how do we get food on the table for our kids, right? So I've gone through an actualization process of identity. And when we were in Pakistan, we had a lot of culture clash because, again, like I said, we look brown, we talk the language, we eat the food, but the way we've been brought up in Kenya and in the UAE is very different. My mum's been a working woman since she was 17, and she felt a little bit restricted I'm not saying everyone is restrictive, but she felt restricted in the kind of life she could live as an independent woman. My brother, grew up in Kenya, and then he was very, very little. So language was a big barrier for him. He couldn't understand language. I remember very distinctly going to school in Lahore, which is where we were, which is one of the cities in the Punjab region. And the teacher was teaching. It was an English medium school, so their curriculum was the GCE system or from the British, but they were teaching maths in Urdu, and I was so disengaged. I had no idea what to understand, which is why I have so much empathy at the moment when we have, people from different languages, because I'm like, I remember that feeling of sitting there. It distinctly stays with you, and you don't understand what the teacher's saying. You're too afraid to ask the question. And I went home and I cried, and I was like, I don't know what we're doing. Like, I can't engage with this class because my language is English, and they teach maths in Urdu. So what do I do? And so that's why my dad called us back to the UAE, and we lived a very different life. We lived kind of like in a room, but we lived a happy life. We're just four of us in our family. And it was at that point where my parents were like, we've moved so much, we have to find something stable for our children. So they applied to come to Australia, and we say alhamdulillah, like thanks to God, or grateful to God that we got permanent residency. And I came to Australia in 2012 to the western suburbs of Melbourne. So I'm a very passionate Westie.
Oh wow! Okay, so you came here and you stayed here. That's awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
Hey, quickly before you move on, because you're moving on and there's so much going on here, which is crazy. And it's sort of, for me, I'm like, how did you move between Pakistan, Punjab, and the UAE just like that? Just got up and moved. So that's awesome in itself. But one of the questions I was going to ask is, in the UAE, or in that sort of process from moving from one place to another, and you're sort of saying you have this empathy for people that can't learn, did you know when you were in the UAE, did you feel like an outsider, or was like when you came here and when you were there, did you feel like an outsider in UAE?
I think in retrospect, I probably wouldn't have recognized it even because I was 13 at the time. Probably too young to have the terminology. Maybe I'd feel a little bit. Actually, I do remember I went to Sharjah British School, and I've been the new kid for like 6-7 times with all the moving that I've had. So
that must be rough. You must be pretty good at adapting to situations now if you've made it through 6 or 7 first days at school.
Yeah. And so I remember when I went into the class there, it was Emirati is what the locals of the UAE are called. So it was the Emirati dominated classroom. And I remember the one of the students saying to me, "Oh, you'll get along with one of the girls' name." And she said, "Yeah, she's also Pakistani." And I was like, "But I'm not Pakistani. I'm Kenyan. I don't understand why I would get along with her and not anyone else in this classroom." Fortunate though that girl I met in year 7 to this day is still one of my closest friends. So I'm glad we did meet.
Awesome. Another question I have about moving from UAE or that side of the world to Australia is, do you remember why your parents said Australia would be the one to go to?
We knew a lot of people, and my parents knew a lot of people who were in the UK, and it always came off as a place of stability. Because in Kenya, while they might have had some sort of, my mom had some sort of, had a job, so there was some sort of stability in terms of finances. My dad was actually born in Lahore in Pakistan and came to Kenya, and he never got that stability. He was always, between jobs. He was always like, the visa wasn't being permitted to him. So my understanding is, and like I've talked to them heaps about this, so they just never had, they were constantly in fear that my dad was going to be kicked out. My dad, someone is messing around in my dad's paper, something's not working. So at that time, they moved to the UAE for stability, because they were like, we just want to settle somewhere. We don't, and security, like you want your kids to just feel calm. But if anyone has ever lived in the United Arab Emirates, you would know that migrants never actually get citizenship. Then you can't be naturalized and you can't apply for citizenship. So you're always there as a migrant. And that means that one day, whether you've lived there for 5 years or 45 years, you have to pack your bags one day and leave. And so that was, again, sitting on their mind. And the only way you get a way to get into the country is through a job. So if you don't have a job, the country gives you 40 days to leave. And that's what happened to my family. Is my dad lost his job and we had 40 days to leave the country when we went to Pakistan. And so that's when they were like, we need to find a place where kids will thrive. They don't have to worry about visa issues, and they will get access to education and sanitation and all of that stuff. And Canada and Australia came up because the UK was too challenging to get to, and frankly they weren't interested in it at the time.
Is that in terms of like the visas and the permanent residency and that? Okay.
Yeah. Even if we had family there, it was really challenging. Canada's too cold, and it was really a practical decision because my dad has huge problems.
That's a big logical decision to make. And I've made the same decision. I went to, where did I go first? So I came to Canberra first, and then I went up to Sydney. And the first time I went to Gold Coast, I went, nope, it's not for me. I'm not a hot weather person. So I got as low to the bottom of Aussie as I could, and it's the closest to New Zealand. So it was a no-brainer for me. But then again, sometimes, Melbourne does get up into those 30s and 40s.
It does.
And then some days I feel like, I just never left home. It's freezing. It's awesome.
So good.
So I get it. Okay, so they took Aussie over Canada. And Canada, for me, if I think about it, is like, I think like mountains, snowboarding.
Me too.
So I'm guessing it's, I can't, and I don't want to speak on it because, someone might be listening from Canada and they'll be like, mate, that's not what it's like. But I get it. I get what.
Tyson, I remember when my mum told me I was in my final, I was doing my GCE system, so all levels, and I was 2 weeks away from my finals. And she's like, we have to leave. And I said, I have 2 weeks to finish my education of this level. And she said, nothing you can do, so pack your bags.
Pack your bags and go. That's unreal.
Yeah, you're moving not because we moved as economic migrants. Like my dad is an accountant, so as a PR, but it wasn't necessarily like choice. No one goes like, I'm going to leave everything I've ever known, and comfort of people and family just because. Like to me, the reason was, betterment. The reason was security, stability. We're not refugees, and I know they have a very different experience.
But it's like, for me, when I'm hearing that, it's like that's the reason, but it's the byproduct of the stuff going on in those other countries. But yeah, man, that's crazy to me. Like when I say crazy, I don't mean like, oh man, that's like, I can't understand it. It's like literally like that's unreal that someone can go, you have to get out or you lose your job, you're out in 40 days because we're just not used to it. Like I'm just not used to that idea. I'm used to, you lose your job, go and line up. like we'll hook it, we'll help you out for the next, whatever, not 40 days and then get out of the country. Like that for me, the stress and then having
it's
two
shocking.
kids as well is like, ooh.
That's why I said, I mean, I didn't understand to the extent of what was going on at the time, but I can't imagine what my parents were going through. You know, they had two little kids. They were like, where do we go? What do we do? And that's why I think in retrospect, that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I don't want anyone to ever have to make that choice for their kids or themselves. It's just too heartbreaking.
Yeah, well, and in saying that, let's maybe move along. So you've come to Australia now. So now I'm sort of wondering, now that you've done all this this traveling, the intermittent staying between different countries, areas, and now you're here. Like, who do you think you are? Like, and you've done all this sort of self-awareness. Like,
I have.
You've done a lot by the sounds of it. Who are you now? Like, what do you recognize yourself as? Are you like, I'm Australian, or am I, what do you sort of see yourself as?
So in a very like label-y way, when people ask me, where are you from, who are you, I give them the whole spiel. I'm like, we've asked me, you're going to get it all. It's not a one box. So Mehak is, or I am, a fourth generation Kenyan Punjabi Muslim who lives in Melbourne, Australia. That's the where are you question. I really do throw people off, because then they're like, should we ask more? Should we ever ask that again?
Cool. Moving along.
I think who I am as a person is I strive to be a really empathetic person because of the experiences I've had. The couple of things I did not mention, Tyson, is on top of having gone through 6 schools, the house that I'm currently in at the moment, this is my 21st house, and I'm 24 years old, so we have moved 21 houses. And maybe, the next, I now have my own journey to go ahead, so I will probably have another few houses to add to the list. So I would say I'm really adaptable. When I know something has to happen, we're like, all right, let's just do it then. What's the solution? That's the kind of person I am.
So yeah, that's a big way to sort of explain yourself. And when I was sort of looking at clicking a few Mehak Sheikh sort of things to have a look at you.
Great.
I sort of saw a few, and then I sort of pulled back. I was like, no, I don't want to look into this, because it might sort of shape how I talk to you. And I just want to talk to you as if I was meeting you for the first time.
I'd love to share with you, Tyson. I've sent it to you separately, or I'll send it to you separately. There's actually an amazing TED Talk for anyone who's listening to this podcast. It's my absolute favorite in the world. It's called "Don't Ask Where I'm From, Ask Where I Am Local," and it's by a woman named Taye Selassie. And it's a beautiful talk where she talks about how there's these 3 R's that connect us, relationships, rituals, and restrictions. And so you can get up and go to another part of the world, and if you have the 3 R's connecting, you feel like you're at home. So
is this the one?
That's the one. Yes, cool. That's exactly the one.
I'll put it up just so if people do have a look, they can have a jack at that later. But that's really cool. Don't ask where I'm from, ask where I'm a local. Wicked. Yes. I like that idea, because that's sort of what it is. It is sort of about at the moment, isn't it? Like, we're all from different areas, but this is where we're calling home at the moment. And I mean, you had 21 homes, so you know the most homes here. I'm pretty sure you got the record. I might actually make a little poll and might put up on the Culture Cast page, like how many houses have you been in? Because I've moved for a fair few too. Actually, I can't think.
There you go.
1, 2.
You should sit down and write them down.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm quite at 21 though, to be honest with you. I think you got me capped, but that's all right. What I might do now is I just want to pull apart a couple things.
Yeah,
so for me, I just wanted to talk about, so Kenya, I guess sort of in my eyes is sort of a bit easier to understand. Kenyan people, the country, whatever. For me, it's more when I was talking to you, where is or what is Punjabi, because I've heard that a lot, over the years here, Punjabi people, this sort of thing. And then when I actually asked someone what it was, they were like, I'm pretty sure it's a country, or I think it might be a language, or it's a culture. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't actually know what it is. And I went to look it up today, and I thought, no, actually, I'm not going to look it up. I'm just going to ask what it is. But you've already answered some of it. But maybe give me a bit of understanding as to why I'm confused. Like, why would I be confused?
Totally. Totally. So I did mention it is a state that was divided in half when there was a partition that was happening. And again, I'll send you links if you want to put links with this recording. I think that would be great. So I think why people are confused is because of how the narrative of Punjab has been taken out into the wider world. So I struggled with it too, because I was like, well, we speak Punjabi, so it is a language for anyone who's thinking about it. We eat food that is absolutely the exact same as the people on the other side of the border. We wear the same clothes, we have the same music, but we have different rituals. Some rituals are different, some rituals are not. So the rituals that are different are actually influenced by religion and faith. Because I think what's happened over many, many years and over not a lot of reflective conversations is that religion and culture have been and nationality actually in this part of the world, nationalism, religion, and culture have been so intertwined with each other that people will do something and they'll be like, yeah, that's what Punjabis do. So the reason I think it's got so mixed up is because we have a large Sikh community in Australia. So Sikhism, as in the faith, there's a lot of them. I can't speak on their religion, of course, but what I can say is that often we say that that's the Punjabi community. And they are.
I've heard this before too. Yep.
Yeah, and they absolutely are Punjabi. But there are also Punjabis who are Muslims. That is where I suppose my family is. And there's also Hindu Punjabis who they practice a different faith. But again, we all speak the same language. We all eat the same food. We have very similar rituals.
Yep. Okay, now I'm getting more of a picture because this is sort of where I was heading with this. I was thinking there has to be something that is going to clear this up for me, and it does, because I have talked to someone who is Punjabi and then Hindu, and I'm going, I thought it was Sikh, or where's the and now you're telling me that there's also a Muslim card dropped in there. So that's where the confusion is coming from. There's a difference in locations and religion across 3 different places, and I'm guessing there's probably more now. But okay, cool. Thanks heaps for clearing that up for me, because I will do it. I think I will have to share some links and maybe even some visuals about where exactly it is, because if you gave me a map, if you did that whole thing where, I think it's a thing where they ask Americans where like Australia is, and they're just like, Canada? No, I think I'd be that guy. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I'm so put on the spot. If I don't know, like if I don't see the whole map and I know a couple things I'm terrible. So I'll do that.
Yeah.
I guess that leads me into my next thing. You've told me that you're a practicing Muslim, and I don't even know if I spell practicing right, but that's okay. But what does that mean to you? Like, it's really interesting to me to hear from you what a practicing Muslim does, what a practicing Muslim is, because as we know, Muslims is one of the sort of, if we talk about flavors of the year, in terms of media, Muslim is right up there at the the last X amount of years. So if, without triggering you too much, I don't want to, start something we can't finish, but maybe quickly, what is a Muslim? Just a small brief. I know
sure.
massive thing, but maybe a quick little thing about what is Muslim and what does a practicing Muslim in your eyes look like at the moment? Like, what are you doing to practice your faith?
Yeah, thank you. So a Muslim is a person who practices the faith of Islam. That is the absolute straightforward way. So I was born into a Muslim family. I haven't reverted into the religion, and I wouldn't say I was very religious, quote unquote, if that's how people describe it. But I always knew about faith, and I always saw it being practiced in different ways. Whether it's when as I've grown up, my dad and I have had a lot of conversations about faith, and he says that 5% or like a smaller proportion is about worship and is about like your connection to like spirituality and something supreme. But 95% or the larger proportion is how do you walk this earth, and how do you navigate and talk to other people, and how do you be a good person. So that is how I was taught Islam. That's how I've always seen it happen around me. So whether it's the greeting, like I did when I started this podcast, this interview, or whether it's like before we eat, you say a prayer. After you eat, you say a prayer of being grateful. All of those are practices that I think I know have come from faith, and that's why I say practicing Muslim, because I
Cool.
embed those in my life.
But like I'm saying, like, you know, when we move here, when we settle here, when we sit in these communities, and if we look at the Muslim community in Victoria, you know, at some point we got to school up to learn about these people, because you can inadvertently, you know, offend someone, you know, or do something that, you know, is against their faith, that you have no idea you're doing at some point or other. But then again, you know, if you've been here for long enough and you understand about culture and your understanding about your community, there might be a time you might want to start learning about it.
Well, I mean, it's the same reason I think like we need to learn about First Nations communities, because we share the land with them. It's the same reason I want to know more about Maori culture or Samoan culture, because I'm like, you're my neighbors. Like, I want to understand you, and I want to be able to sit in a place, like, let's sit around a park and have a meal, because food brings everyone together. Excuse me, and be completely
or it creates
okay.
major problems, because, you know, if you're sitting next to me and there's only like one thing left, like like instant civil war mode will happen.
Oh my
like
God.
I'm just telling you now. Open it right up. If there's something I really like and someone else is eating it, the food jealousy within me gets the better of me every time.
You know, I'm
Easily.
the same. I don't like sharing my chips, my fries, and every time I have them, I'm like, do I do this as a formality? Should I just ask and pray that nobody says yes they want some?
It's that whole, and you know, that actually might be a part of Australian culture that, you know, I've learned to love, is like, you know, you ask, and people always like, hey mate, would you like some of this, or would you like some of that, you know? And it's like, you sort of ask people that you like, but your best friends you'll never ask. You'll never like give your best friend anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that is awesome. Do you mind? We might just shift over to something. Let's talk about the small things. So I've put the small things, and then I've said marriage, family, and friends, which is,
your biggest thing.
The small, biggest things. And I know you said yourself you're not married, but, you know, and I'm not either, but I'm on my way in a way. So I'm trying to think, you know, what are the small things? What are the daily things that, you know, I wouldn't know about your life that you have, that things happen, and, you know, in your world,
influenced by
that
are influenced by culture. So there's things. This is why I've pulled apart a lot of the things we do, and I'm like, is this cultural or is this religious? So I'll talk about a bit of both.
Hey, both.
So for example, I think the most important one is like the greetings, the prayers. We pray 5 times a day. And in the beginning, it was just felt like very much, oh, that's just something we do. And then I was like, I try very hard to lead my life with purpose. So why am I doing this? And I really spent a lot of time thinking about it. Like I was saying to you a bit earlier, I wasn't really religious growing up, but over the past, so when I was 18, I don't know the math, maybe like six years. And over the past 6 years, I've really gone and learned and really reflected about it. So I think my relationship with faith has grown much, much stronger, because I feel quite deeply connected. And so praying 5 times a day for me is not just a tick box. It's like a moment in your day to stop and go like, I'm going to disconnect from the world and be in this like present. And it feels like meditation, even though it's not exactly classified as such. So that's another like daily thing that you'll find us doing. We obviously eat like everyone else, but in my menu of the day, it can look very, very different. So in the morning, I might just have something like, actually, I'll tell you about today, because today's a good example. In the morning, we had what we call chene and puri. So chene is chickpeas made in like a gravy with some potatoes and some beans. And then puri is like the small, it's like a small naan, because that's the most common thing. It's a small flat bread, but it fluffs when you fry it, and you just use that to dip it. So that's like in the morning. And then just now, my mom was making what are they called? Mabuyu and achari. This is from East Africa, and they're like these little seeds that are kind of like dipped in. Oh my God, I'm really bad at cooking, so I have no idea, but something sweet. And you kind of like you suck on the seed, and then you've got the sweetness, and you throw the seed away. And that's now from a different part of the world, but also part of my diet. And then I might have like pasta for dinner, because it's fast, right?
Awesome.
Um,
Okay, yeah. So
that's food.
immediately, this is one of the things that I think is one of the most interesting things for me, because food is like you said, it's something that we all do. We all have to eat, and we all have so different approaches to the day and how food works. And a lot of our food and stuff and traditions has been sort of reconnected over the last couple of years, especially in the Māori side of things. The language and the culture and the rituals that we have has been reinvigorated, and people
Yes.
that all the stuff that was lost is coming out so much at the moment. And we're talking about food, and you were talking about the drinks set up at the cafe that you wanted, and I went away from that and I went on this little rant, and I was going, we don't have a hot drink. We don't have a bloody hot drink. Why don't we have a hot drink? So I'm
Why
going,
is no one drinking something?
and I'm ringing people. And I'm going, hey, Nana, hey, do Māori have hot drinks? Like, what hot drink did we have? Like, I'm buzzing out. And so it took me down a path. So, I was hoping that would be something that we will generate that in somebody else. Is if we talk about this food over the time, someone might actually go, hey, what do we actually have for breakfast? Because I'm a Nutri-Grain kid. I'm a Nutri-Grain kid for now. I'll eat Nutri-Grain right now. I'm probably going to have some after this because I love Nutri-Grain. Like, end of story. Like,
So good.
Wheat Bix, Kellogg's, cornflakes, whatever. Nah, get it out of here. I'm a Nutri-Grain dude from way back. And the milk at the end of Nutri-Grain is like the best tasting thing in this earth.
Right?
If anyone asks me. But in saying that, I had a Ethiopian breakfast.
That's beautiful.
On the last Sunday. So I hit one of my colleagues up. I said, listen, man, you've been talking a big game about this Ethiopian
Let's
food.
have it.
And I'm on the same day as you're on Sunday. I feel like you need to be hitting your mother up to cook us something. Say it's for you and your new kid, but bring it in for me. And he hit me with something, I was thinking, breakfast. He brought in, it was like small sort of torn up bread. I can't remember the name. It was in this sort of like cooked gravy sort of thing.
Ooh.
And then he's going, do you like tea? And I'm like, what do you mean do I like tea? And he's like, do you like a cup of tea? And I was like, oh yeah. He's like, okay, cool. Brings me out a black sweet tea with this curry with bread and chickpeas, whatever, and yogurt.
Breakfast.
And I'm like, how do I eat this, bro? like, give me the rundown. He's like, bro, so what you do is you got to get dirty with it. You have to use your hands. You chuck those utensils out. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I've got a white shirt on, so I'm already going to lose. And I'm eating it, and he's like, and you have the sweet tea.
No.
I'm like, but it's hot, bro. And he's like, I know. He's like, drink it. So I drink it, and I was like, this is on. Like, I don't know why this works, but it just works. And then that's got us talking, we're talking about those sort of things. And he's going, what do you eat? What do you mean you don't have this? Like, you've never had a sweet tea before? And I'm like, bro, tea has milk in it, or it's herb tea. That's the only tea I have. So it's such an interesting thing to get the conversation started.
I know, like, Southeast Asian food, like, so there is a few markers of the food that we cook. It's spicy. Like, that is the one marker is if the food is hot and spicy, it's probably cooking in my house. It's also, we eat with our hands. So it's gravy with rice. So it's gravy with flatbread. So you break it with your hand. And that's, again, it's like, it's cultural to sit around a table and eat like that. But I also learned recently that it's also, we have this thing called sunnah in religion, where we believe in a prophet, and we believe that the prophet acted in different ways in his lifetime that taught us how to act. So to eat with your hand is a sunnah, because I don't know why exactly, but so it's both. And then the other marker would be, it's we put turmeric, so food stains or food. Like, you can see the color, see the red.
I've had some experiences with turmeric before. Yep.
And I love talking about food because, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, actually everything is political, but food is political because when you're younger, you take like a little naan bread or naan and, gravy to school, and everyone just looks at you funny and they're like, why do you bring that thing that smells? Then now you hit 24 and everyone's like, let's go have some Indian, dude. I'm like, excuse me, when did this become trendy? This is my food.
I've heard that from, a fair few people, and even people in the Greek community, Italian community, older ones, my partner's grandparents, and that saying, when they first came, pizza and pasta was just not a thing that you brought. Like if you brought that, it was like frowned upon, scowled at, all that sort of thing. And like now you go, there's streets dedicated to it. There's Uber Eats. There's a pizza like
section.
There's an Indian section, a blah blah section. Like there's no Māori section. So Uber Eats, I'm coming for you. No.
Exactly. Let's get a Pacifica section. I want that. I want to experience it.
There is one awesome food truck, Riley's Kai. I'll plug you just so you know, I got your back like that.
Yes.
I go there all the time. I love it. But the other thing too is like, we don't go to North Indian truck carts because we just don't know. Like I haven't gone to an Ethiopian restaurant because I just literally would walk in there and go, man, I've got no idea what I want. I got no idea if anything's good. So I've literally said to this guy before, I've said, hey man, you need to send me a list of stuff I buy. I'm just gonna walk in, give it to them, be like, yep, hook it up. Like whatever it is on that list, put it on the table, we're eating. Because and people, it takes a brave person to walk into a place where they completely don't understand what's going to happen. They don't know anybody in the room, and they're going to pay money. Like it's a barrier in itself just to get in there. Let alone the money side of things. You're going to spend your money that you've earned on something you don't know if you're going to like. Like that's not something that people do easily. And then you do have an option to just buy a pizza that is good, and you're going to get it and it's going to be exactly the way you like it, extra mushrooms or whatever. So I get it. Yep.
So, just going off the food, food is also a big thing at our weddings, and at our funerals as well, as I've learned recently, from my parents. But I'll talk a bit more about the weddings. We are known, Punjabis or South Asians, not Indians only, but a lot of part of that region are known for big or massive weddings and very colorful and very, noisy and lavish and all of that. And they're really fun.
In my eyes, I feel like every wedding is like a Bollywood film. Like that's that's what I think. Like if I think Indian wedding or like that sort of culture wedding, I'm thinking like there's like no black. It's just like every color other than black is in the room. Like there's no white or black.
True. That's so true. So it's very traditional for a bride to wear red. And gold, red and gold. I don't know if there's a traditional color that a groom wears. I haven't heard of it. I think cream is what often people wear. And there is, there's so many little rituals that I don't know, again, if I told you, Tyson, last year I went for my first ever Punjabi wedding where I was like, I understand what's happening. And because I'm the kind of person I am, I was like, so why are we doing this? And I try to document all of this stuff to capture it. So I got to document all these different rituals and where they come from. It was great. So we have in weddings, we have 3 main ceremonies that I know of. And the first one is called a mehendi. And the ceremony is to put henna. It's to put henna on hands. So again, it's a marker of these South Asian weddings is henna. And it's not only to put it on the hands, but there's this whole ritual where a bride and groom sit next to each other, and there is henna and sweets in 2 plates in front of them, and guests come and put some henna on a leaf on their hand and give them something sweet to eat. Oh, and they put some oil. So it's actually called a tail mendi. So they put some oil in the head, just like that. Symbolically, no one is actually getting their hair oiled.
Mate, you touch my fiance's hair on her wedding day. That hand's getting cut off. I tell you right now.
So I was like, why do we do this? And as part of it, there's a haldi ceremony as well for the woman where they make this mixture out of turmeric and yogurt, and they put it on the, like, there's a girls only kind of party where they put it on the body and they sing and they dance and they put henna. And then there's like the boys only. And they said that they do it. It's symbolic of like getting ready. So when you're getting ready, you would like oil your hair and you wash it up. So that's symbolic of that. And then the second ceremony is, this is like the main one. It's called the nikah ceremony. That's the main one for if you're a Muslim or practicing Muslim. The nikah is actually the only compulsory thing that you need to do. Everything else I say is culture. So you decide how your relationship to it. The nikah is the marriage contract, and so you have witnesses, 2 witnesses for each of the bride and the groom, and the priest, or we call them the imam, asks about your consent, and you both have to give consent willingly. So coercion or force, like none of that is allowed. They ask for your consent 3 times, and then there is a signing process that takes place, and you're kind of, it doesn't happen in the same room often. It happens separate rooms, and then there is someone who passes the message to say the woman has given consent and comes and tells the boy side, and then the boy side goes and tells, and they're like, they have given consent. Now it's a bit more modern. I was looking at some pictures as well, like people put like this kind of cloth behind me, but more transparent in between the bride and the groom, so it's a bit more aesthetic. Also, like the bride has her like chuli is what we call it, like the headscarf, or the scarf goes up until down, so you don't actually see each other until the moment we've consented to the wedding. So that's the main ceremony, and then afterwards we have a reception, or we call it a walima, and that's I was asking my dad, I was like, why we do this? And he's like, it's really like a moment of announcing. It's to announce that these 2 people are now a couple, and they're now part of the family.
It's the Facebook post, yeah? It's the Facebook post, yeah.
It's a Facebook post that costs, $20,000. That's what it is.
That's the real Facebook official post, that one, 20K.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing as a reception. I think in very many Catholic or white weddings, after you have the ceremony, you go for the reception. So that's what it is. There's a lot of little things where, which side is doing this bit and which side is doing that. So the walima traditionally is done by the groom side to say, we have now welcomed this woman in our family. When after the nikah, there's a ceremony called the rukhsati, and to rukhsat means to leave. So rukhsati is like a ceremony where the daughter is like leaving the house, even if she's just going next door. And rituals around that. There is, before the tail mendi, there's lots of we call them like dolki. The dolki is it looks like this. This is not dolki. It looks like this, but it's drum, and you kind of play it on either side. And that's a ceremony where you sit and you sing songs and you play music, or you play the dol.
Cool.
That's weddings. They take about a week and a half.
Man, and you know what? I've heard of one. Like I've heard of one. One of my mates that I've met through online. He married in someone from that faith or that culture. One of the cultures. I'm not too sure which one it was, but just watching his because he's Snapchatting everything. But through the whole week, I'm gonna go get my suit on, and like everyone's there. Like it's not just like bro, me and the best man are going to go grab our suits. It's like the dad, the uncle, the grandfather, twice removed, the bro's driving the car. Like it's just great. Like it was just unreal. It's like a whole event. It's like it's massive, and I love that. So that's pretty much. I reckon that's wrapped us up for the topic too, and we're getting on. So I want to sort of bring it sort of into the third topic.
Yes, let's do it.
This is sort of because I call it cross-cultural. I've seen it called intercultural. You've said it, and then I've seen acculturation.
Acculturation, yes.
And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I feel like it's probably something that I want to know about, or like I do. And what those are and why it is important, because I've sort of obviously doing this where we're sort of getting this cross-cultural idea happening, but you have a good understanding of this, so. Maybe I don't want to sort of get you into your zone and into your lecture zone and the slide points, but just a brief to someone that doesn't know what this is about, because some people this isn't a part of their life, cross-cultural or intercultural ideas is not a part of people's lives, and that's cool because they just haven't been open to that or haven't been exposed to that yet. But if you were to sum that up to somebody, what is it and why it is important? What do you sort of want to say to that?
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't actually know this terminology until much later as well. I came across it because when I came to Australia, and I talked about this in the beginning, it was very much like, hey, you guys are brown, you should hang out with the Pakistanis. Hey, you guys are Kenyan, you should hang out with the Kenyans. And I was like, it's not that straightforward, actually. It's a lot of history. And where are the places where I can meet people from all parts of the world and understand their complexities as well? And that's when I came across the word intercultural engagement. I was like, when there's many people and they're all kind of eating together, that's intercultural. Or cross-cultural, which is kind of, I think, what we're doing right now, where I've learned a few things about you, you've learned a few things about me, and now tomorrow if I see someone, I'll be like, oh, I understand what's happening now. Like that's cross-cultural in my in my mind. And then acculturation is, again, they're very interchangeable in many ways. But I don't know if I told you this, Tyson. I actually, my theses are published when I finished them in school, and my research or my thesis is on acculturation.
Okay, cool. Well, I definitely didn't know that, because I probably wouldn't have asked you, because otherwise you want to just drop it on me. But definitely send me the links.
I'll send you the link, yeah, so people can read about the research. But essentially, acculturation, in terms of academia and academics, is the outcome when you have different groups mingling with each other. So we call it like the acculturation attitude or the acculturation outcome. When you have two groups that come together, and we have like the host culture and we have the origin culture. If you come together and you're able to retain your origin culture and mingle with the host culture, we then say you are integrated. So that's your acculturation outcome, is you are an integrated person. You have a bit of both the worlds, and you're happy, and your well-being is good, and your all of that's great. Then we have what we call assimilated outcomes. So that's another acculturation outcome. And assimilation happens happens around the world, but happens when you let go of your origin culture and you just take on the host culture, which we see a lot of, and we know about many instances about this in history. And this is really problematic, because there is there's an expectation that if you come to our area, you have to let go of everything, and that's not healthy, actually. And also the research shows it, like your well-being drops when you assimilate, because there will come a point in your life where your children might ask you a question and you'll be like, I don't know, because I've never thought about it, or I've lost culture, I've lost language, I've lost traditional rituals and stuff. And then the two other is what we call separated or marginalized. These are, again, outcomes. A separated person is someone who has no relationship with the origin culture and no relationship with the host culture. Yeah. That person becomes entirely separated, and therefore, like, I think your moral compass, your bearings, they're a bit lost. And then a person who is marginalized is someone we would say or if your acculturation outcome is you are marginalized, you have just retained your origin culture in a place that has other cultures. So you did not mingle with the host culture. You don't know anyone who's different to you.
Okay,
I'm so glad
we started with you. Because in a way, you've summed up, you've put into words, or you've been able to put into words concepts that we in our organisation and in our culture understand but don't know how to say. And that for me is really interesting. I'll definitely be reading up about it. And it's cool how you've said it, because you've said the word, but then you've related it into layman's terms for me and for other people, because if I heard marginalised, assimilated, I won't understand exactly what it is, but breaking it down like that, that's a real interesting way to do it. I'd love to have a visual of that on our page.
Yeah, there is visual. I've got a visual.
Sweet. I'd love to have a visual of that to just bring up, because I think that's awesome. And that's sort of what we have talked about, like the committee and me, and through the Culture Cast, we've been talking about this stuff, but we haven't used those words. But we understand what it is and where it is and why it's a bad thing. And we've seen some of the outcomes, probably not the outcomes that you guys have seen in terms of the research you've done, but definitely we can pinpoint something and go, hey, that's because of this, or that's, these guys aren't mixing because, he's separated and he's marginalized. So it's really cool that you've come up with that. Oh, like not come up with that, but you've been able to
learn about it,
learn and research and put it into writing and maths. That's so cool. This one. What misconceptions do you see in Wyndham about your communities? It's a big question, because there is a fair few.
Please reel me in. Because
cool.
I can go, as you've already picked up, I can talk a lot. So reel me in. But I think the two that I want to point out
cool.
is the misconception around a woman's place if you're a Muslim, what a woman's place is. I think very much because of media, we are portrayed as what is the word? Oppressed. That's the word. But I think, and I'm not dismissing, I know oppression happens around the world. Oppression happens everywhere. I know that's the thing. But I think the issue and the misconception is that the oppression is associated with the faith. We're like, Islam, therefore oppressed. People forget that Islam and Muslim are two separate things. A Muslim is someone who takes on Islam and makes it theirs and then acts in certain ways and navigates the world. Islam gives Muslim women rights in a place, and a very special place. Actually, we have this belief, which I will just share this one belief with you, that a mother's place is is 4 times that of a father's. Not practically, but it is just that a mother holds so much of value in us because she carries us, and she cares for us like no one else can, actually. So I think this is the misconception I want to talk about. I think Islam gives women a lot of space. We have a lot of power. Some of the historical figures that we are asked to look at, were businesswomen, were people who led armies, like they were leaders, women leaders. So that's the one thing.
Yeah. So I guess this is where I'm going to head to now on our chat, and it's sort of topic 4. So where do we go from here? And I've already heard it with you. You've got this group of people. You've got you're helping people across Vic and across Aussie with enterprises and all these sort of things. Can I just bring you back to Wyndham? Because we're sort of doing this in terms of Wyndham, because we sort of do the whole thing. If I'm living local and I want to start local, you know what I mean? So where do we go from here in terms of Wyndham? Because I feel like I've sort of talked to you about it before, if you start, you can just start with one person at a time. And, it's sort of like that whole sort of idea of, if you start with one, then they'll tell 2, and then, 2 will tell 4. And
domino effect,
that domino effect. So for you, where do we go from here as a community? What can we do as a community, and why do it?
Yeah, no, great question. And I love that you asked it specific to Wyndham. I'm incredibly passionate about Wyndham, and you know this, Tyson. But I ran in the local elections because I know that we can do so much more. These are the ideals I want to bring, this idea of interculturalism. I think where we go from here is a couple of things. I think on a practical level, I know that policies can make a big difference. So we've got this thing called the Intercultural Cities Program. Again, I'll send you a link. It's a policy program that is come from the Council for Europe. But essentially what it does is it sifts through organizations, city councils, all their policies, and looks at it and goes like, are you bringing people together, or are you pitching people against each other? And unfortunately, sometimes our policies actually pitch people against each other. And I'll give you an example of this. They'll be like, here's $5,000. All of you community groups, try and get it. And so then I'm like going, I'm dramatizing this, but I'll be like, hey, my community needs that more than your community needs that. So I'm going to like fight against you to try and get it. The same thing happens with resources, right? We'll be like in 2 community rooms. And on one side, you have like the Maori community having their event. And the other side, you have like, I don't know, some other community, Pakistani community having an event. And I don't think we do enough to bring those leaders together and say, hey, you guys share rooms. Like, you can even just, if you have leftover bread, pass it over here. Or if you have leftover something, pass it over there. Like, that, I think, is how we practically start to move together, is we bring these community leaders together and we go like, the truth is, again, we share this planet, so let's see how we can share our lives as well. And I ran a program for this, Tyson, called Connecting Cultures last year because I was so passionate about it. The other way I think is, and I've talked to you about this, I really wanted to do a festival that demonstrates that, we have deep down, humans have the same values. You want a family, I want a family. You want peace, I want peace, right? The way we do it is different. My family, we live in extended joint situations. The uncle, the auntie, everyone lives together. Other families, maybe they live smaller families. But so for me, it's like the expression of your value might be different. Deep down, your value is the same. So how do we demonstrate that? And I thought of an idea, which I'm so keen to do at some point in life, to talk about warm drinks, hot drinks, and say, how do you do your hot drinks? This is how we do it. And we have an exchange through that. And I really appreciate that we're both still having a hot drink. It's just done differently. And I've learned how you do it, and you've learned how I do it. And tomorrow, if I see it somewhere else, I'm not going to be like, ew, that's weird. I'll appreciate what it is, right?
I think that you've just summed it up. So if you learn something about me and I learn something about you, if we see it the next day, we won't think it's, ooh, that's weird. And that's pretty much where this has started from. And if I jump onto it as well with saying this thing, why do it?
Yeah.
The reason for me, like why we do this and why I'm talking to you is that one of the big things for me was that if I talk to somebody that doesn't speak English properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this weird assumption that they're not clever. And for me, whenever I see someone that doesn't speak English, I go like this: you are one clever ass dude to know how to speak this much English. Like, I'm like, I can't even speak my own language very well. I can speak English well because I've learned English all my life. But my own language, I'm like, oh, this is rough. So for that person to have, jumped, what are you doing? 6 countries now? Jumped to 6 countries and can still speak enough for me to understand what's going on. That person's clever. They just can't say clever things. And that for me is where this hot drink stuff comes into reality for me. Is it's like, you've got a hot drink and I've got a hot drink. It creates that whole idea of when you guys are in the mosque, it doesn't matter how much English you got, whatever it was, we still made this cup of drink, whether it be different, and we're still drinking, we're the same sort of people, we can learn from each other. Just how we learn from each other will be harder because you can't speak English, but that doesn't mean you don't have something to teach. So that's why I love what you're saying. And so I've sort of got this next one, taking the next step. And for me to sort of wrap up what we've talked about, I just think taking the next step is what you've said is, you want those leaders that are in the rooms, that are around the round tables at council, that are talking, at the, the focus groups, to start talking to one another.
Yes.
And I think that the community in terms of Wyndham is it's prime time.
I agree.
This is the time to do it. We got to start it somewhere. It started tonight on the Culture Cast.
Yes.
And at some points it does happen, but for me, the reality of it is it's only happening over issues. And that's the worst thing for me. Is it's like, I don't want to be talking to you when there's a problem. I want to be talking to you when we want to do something together that's fun. You know what I mean? So when we're talking together when there's an issue, that's when we're not coming into it with a kind heart or with blessings to you. It's like, I'm coming to talk to you about something you messed up or I messed up. So it's really cool to be able to come together with you. Someone that's crossed a fair few different barriers to do it for the first week, which is awesome. But I'd like to, because what I want to do with these first 8 initial weeks is I want to commit to something at the end of it. Because for me, like there's a lot of talk. A lot of talk goes on every week.
I agree.
Not much stuff not much stuff happens. It doesn't. It doesn't. Stuff doesn't tangibly happen, or it doesn't happen publicly. So I'd like to sort of commit this week that I will do a hot drink session with you. At some point, we're going to do a hot drink session with NMP and people of your community, whichever way you want to sort that out is fine. I'll help organise it as well if you're open with that.
I am.
And I'm hopefully, if you're okay with it, to invite the rest of the 8 participants to have a hot drink. So if you're keen, I'm keen. We'll lock that in.
Let's do a hot drink session.
I'm going to work on figuring out what our hot drink is, because I know we'll have one somewhere.
You're in the cold, aren't you? So you have to have something.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like I said, I'm sure we have something. We got something in the background there. They just don't want to tell me the secrets. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Was there anything else you sort of wanted to end with?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this. I think this is so important. It is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be doing or having. I also wanted to just say, everything I've spoken about today is lived experience from my own life and what I've learned and heard. So I don't want to, again, I'm not painting everyone with the same brush. So please, do your reading, ask curious questions. Maybe where are you from is not a curious question, but where are you local is a curious question. And
I like it.
I just want to say, I hope that I've done justice to the things that I have spoken about. So, and people learn from that.
No worries. And like I said it at the start, and I've said it all through, the release on Culturecast, it's just an initial step. It's a little dive into a culture or a set of cultures or religion from someone's point of view. This isn't the Wikipedia page or where all those sort of things. We're not asking for that. We're talking about something just to create some awareness, get some understanding between you and myself.
Yeah.
So before we go, did you want to sort of finish with your words of blessing, or how you sort of wrap up, and then I'll finish with my karakia, and then we'll wrap it up like that.
Yeah, so we also wrap up in the absolute same way. We say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As I'm leaving you with prayers of peace and blessings to you and your family. We also say Khuda Hafiz or Allah Hafiz, which means the same thing. May God continue to bless you and your family.
Awesome. All right, cool. All right, sweet. And then in our one, I will say that this is sort of the worldwide closing karakia or prayer that everyone uses in Māori sort of at the
Great.
moment. And it's more of it's more in relation to the Bible sort of side of thing, and the sort of I like same with me. I'm not the most learned person on these things, but I just know that this is what we say every time we do our thing. So kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ari ki ai hukaraiti, me te aroha o te atoa, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu ake amene.